This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the internet's best platform for web design. I have made so many stupid mistakes in reading, ones that have cost me years of good learning and ones that I'm still trying to correct to this day. I may have started my channel based on reading, but I'm not some scholar or sage with this big authority on the topic. I have been manipulated by influencers. I have fallen victim to hustle culture and even my own pride sometimes. But after learning all of these mistakes the hard way, the least I could do is share them here. YouTube is repetitive nowadays, so I'm going to try and steer clear of the more boring standard mistakes and focus on the uncommon ones. The ones that you could be completely overlooking in your own reading. The first is what I call resisting fiction, and you'll see what I mean in a second. But first, let's say you gather some friends one chill evening to watch a movie or a show, and you pick something that's fictional but still takes itself seriously. Maybe like Better Call Saul, for example. And within the group, there's always that one friend who feels like they have to pipe up every 5 minutes to say, oh, well, actually, that's not how it works in real life. Maybe they spotted some inaccuracy in a courtroom scene. And it's like, yeah, no shit. It's television. It's fiction. There will be creative liberty taken in order to get the overall message across and to make it more entertaining. Of course, not every inaccuracy is okay. I'm not saying that. But nobody likes someone who is constantly poking holes in everything and refuses to enjoy the art for what it is. The same is true for fiction books. In the past, I used to resist its pull on me because I thought I was somehow above that and that it was silly to get absorbed into a story. And it's like, that's dumb, man. That's just arrogance at that point. In itself, it was the reason I thought fiction was pointless and that there was nothing to be learned from it. And that is just crazy now that I'm hearing it again. There is so much depth and insight in fiction, but only if you let it speak to you. Only if you allow yourself to be immersed and to really come close to all the characters, the emotions, the themes, all of that stuff. There's a reason our society is built on stories and why we love movies, songs, and books that fill us with emotion. Storytelling is the vehicle that delivers big ideas, and it does it really damn well. And I'd say that there's more insight waiting for you in fiction than any of that self-help non-fiction flooding the bookstores nowadays. And anyway, they use fiction to get their point across, so it really speaks for itself. I've been reading for years, for pretty much my whole life, with some dips along the way, of course. But now that I look back on it, 80% of that is gone. It's a black hole. I don't remember what I read, nothing stuck with me, and it didn't change who I was. That is many hours of work thrown away into the trash. I'm not going to blame it on any one thing, but ironically, a big part of it was my desire to read more. With every book I chose, no matter how interesting it was, I'd always read with thoughts of the next book. Something new, shiny, something different. I remember too that as I approached the end of the book, I would start to almost rush it. My focus would get sloppy and I was so fixated on finishing that so I could pick up the next book. It's such a waste. And I always compare it to food. It's like, you can't enjoy your main meal if you're always thinking about dessert with every bite. And you can't enjoy the moment if you're stressing about something that's going to happen tomorrow. If you're always worrying about what's next, then you can't enjoy what's in front of you, even though it's amazing in itself. It's how you throw away any chance of joy or meaning in the present. Because even when you do switch to the next book, you are just repeating the cycle. And you can never be truly happy with what you have. At that point, it's consumerism, like they do over on Book Talk. And we probably want to steer clear of that in more ways than one. I now read with quality in mind rather than volume. And that means it's going to be slow, it's going to be thoughtful, and with lots of effort. And yes, you will end up reading way less than before if you choose to do this, but is that not worth it for what you're gaining in return? The books stick with you, they change your character, and they become part of who you are, rather than something you just have to remember, like you're studying for a test. I'll link some videos below on how you can actually put that into practice, the slow, methodical learning. In fairness, the quality-quantity compromise isn't universal, at least when it comes to websites. I use Squarespace to build mine, and I'm no designer, right, but within a few hours, I made something quite aesthetically pleasing, at least in my eyes, and I hope you agree. So even with little time, you're getting quality. The drag and drop editing means you aren't limited in what you can create. It's how I built my homepage here. I tweaked every little detail until I thought it was perfect. I use my site to show off my writing in a nice way. So this is a great hub for your own blog or mailing list. And if your goal is to make a living off your skills, you can do that. You can make a paywall for your blog and your videos. And that's super nice because the business side of creativity can be unforgiving without the right tools. And here it's all there for you. You can take it a step further with the courses feature, where you design this nice structured series of video lessons and share it with the world. With, of course, all of the analytics you need to keep track of the interaction. To get started yourself, you can go to squarespace.com and use their free trial to design your first website. And once you feel ready to launch it, you can then go to squarespace.com/Odysseus and use code Odysseus to get 10% off of your first website or domain. So do have a look at that. My third big pitfall was listening to YouTubers. Oof, that's awkward. See the problem here? I mean, I'm offering advice just the same as anyone else is. And it's easy for gurus to call out gurus for being gurus in this stupid, endless cycle. But look, not everyone is out to trick you and deceive you. And you can think critically, so what's the problem here? When I first took literature more seriously, I turned to videos on here for advice. And school did a good job, but I wanted more. I was naive and I saw these YouTubers as high sources of authority. Because, they had the subscriber counts, they had the big bookshelves in the background, and all the rest. And to be fair, most of them had the evidence to back it up. But look, it's still YouTube. There's sensationalism, there's marketing, and there's the business side of it that can get in the way of the honesty. Listening to people is not a bad thing, obviously. My mistake was that I took their advice at face value and I put it on a pedestal. I tried to copy every tactic they had word for word. I tried to be like them. And in doing so, I gave up all of my independence and my agency in learning. I was different to them just as you are different from me. And our minds don't work the same way. My favorite reading strategy might cause you to hate literature forever, and vice versa. You might hate taking notes in Obsidian, or whenever you write in a book, it makes you feel uneasy. And that's fine. I like it personally, but doesn't mean you have to. So the point here is to not distrust people automatically, but to take their words with a grain of salt, to weigh it up, to consider it, and most importantly, to experiment yourself. Because you don't know how good advice is until you've seen it in reality. Not every book is truly finished on the last page, meaning you can get to the end of a book, fall for this mistake, and then your effort evaporates into nothing. Mistake number 4 is reading practical books without taking any action. Every book has a different purpose to it. Persian Fire by Tom Holland, not the actor, was written to teach us about the Persian Wars with Greece. It's a history book. This book, The Way of Men by Jack Donovan, is about masculinity. And it was written both to discuss the topic, but also to argue a point that you can consider, whether you agree or disagree. But this set of books is different. They are all practical, meaning they offer you guidance on how to do something in the real world. The most obvious types will be handbooks, like these ones on bushcraft. And I also have quite a few books that teach me how to become a better writer, and you can clearly see how they are practical. However, some books have a mixture of both theory and practical advice. For example, 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, it talks about ideas from religion, from philosophy, from psychology, but then it offers also real-world advice based on all that. The common thread with all of these books is that they demand action from you, the reader. Trust me, it's so easy to binge all of this practical stuff and feel like you're taking action and that you're moving forward in life. I fell victim to that fake accomplishment so many times. The only way we can truly honor these books is to make their ideas a reality, to take their advice and use it. Of course, assuming you agree with it. I do this by taking notes on the practical points and then finding a way to gradually implement them into my life. And I say gradually because if you write down 30 different points of action, it's not happening. That's such an overwhelming flood for your mind, and you can't just overhaul your entire, set of habits and routine in a few days. It's not happening. For example, I recently finished On Writing Well, and I will not read any other writing books until I've taken good notes on this one, and of course given myself some time to practice what it was actually saying. Again, I'll link some videos below on how you can approach content with a bit more intention and mindfulness. Kids are dumb. They're naive. And it's not just kids. You probably think the same way about your past self, even as an adult. You might look back and their memories make you cringe a bit. And that's normal. Much of the time, this embarrassment comes from phases you went through. Maybe you were an emo, or you were crazy into anime or hobby horsing or something. I don't know. But that's all pretty innocent, it's part of growth and it's normal. But there's one aspect that's a bit more sinister, and I felt it in full force. It's intellectual pride, thinking you know everything when you really don't. Whenever I approached books, I came to them looking to agree or disagree, depending on the stance I was expecting to hear. If I knew that the author's main argument was something that clashed with my worldview, I'd approach it with a very defensive and closed-off attitude. And this wasn't critical thinking, mind you, this was just being stubborn, straight up. It was the know-it-all attitude. I didn't treat their arguments fairly, and it killed my learning. And equally, if the author and I shared the similar worldview, I would agree with everything they'd say, I'd lick their boots, all because my own opinions were being reinforced. It's glazing, as they say now. You can't go through life thinking that you know everything, because then you'll never find anything new. You'll just be this walking ideology with no room for critical thinking or independent thoughts. So whenever you read, drop your prejudices, drop your ideology and hear them out. I'm not saying you have to agree, obviously, you can be critical, but the point is to give them a fair platform to stand on in the first place. The authors aren't there to defend themselves, so in a way you have to do that for them. I have a confession, which you probably know already, but whatever. For the longest time I hated fiction, and I know, I can't even look at you in the eyes right now, but seriously, I mean, it's not that unusual in the world of reading. Especially in the hustle culture sphere, people shit on fiction all of the time. They think it's useless, there's nothing to learn from it, it's a waste of time. But why is that? And what changed for me since then? Because I love fiction now. It's like half of what I read. One big thing that pushed me away from fiction was that I stopped reading it too often. And you'll see what I mean with that. My attention span is still not my strongest suit, but a while back it was far worse. I struggled to focus on a story for more than 20, 30 pages. Even then, I felt productive with that. I felt like I was checking off my daily reading time, which, to be fair, I was. But the problem was I could never get immersed into the story. No matter how hard I tried, I didn't feel a connection to the world and the characters. I never felt what it was like to be truly sucked into a story. Like those people you see who can read for hours straight on the weekend. I was jealous of that. Actually, fun fact, the first book to do that for me, actually I think I have it here, hang on. The first book, I don't know why, it's a bit of an odd one, but the first book to ever like truly absorb me into its story was Nelson Mandela's autobiography. You wouldn't expect it, but it did, so I recommend it. It was a good read. But yeah, back to the point. I know today why it was so hard for me to get into the flow, and it was because I read the fiction in small chunks, which made immersion almost impossible. I remember just as I was about to get invested into the book, I stopped reading, and I could only see it the next day again. It chops up the world building, it makes you forget all the important details, and you find it harder to relate to the characters and to get to know them. When I first read about this mistake in How to Read a Book, I tried an experiment. I tried for once to push through my attention span and read for an extra half an hour, let's say. And I think at the time, this was The Hobbit. And not miraculously, it was expected, I actually found myself getting more invested. And I got into that almost flow state of reading where I could just keep going for ages. So if that's something you relate to, I would try two things. First, read for a little bit longer than usual, so you give yourself that time to get into motion. And second, try to save fiction for when you have, or when you know you have a long block of time ahead of you. So you, again, allow yourself that time to feel absorbed. So I don't know, it could be worth a shot. Or maybe I'm delusional and it's just my problem, I don't know. One brisk autumn night, you are feeling scholarly. You pick that one thick book off your shelf that you've been meaning to get to for ages, and you start reading it. Maybe it's philosophy or one of the classics. You realize that you are only 10% of the way through the introduction, and you have not understood more than 2 or 3 paragraphs. What in the shit am I reading? It's not looking good. It's even worse when you know the book has a lot to offer you, but it all just completely flies over your head, And no matter how many times you reread the same stupid sentence, it just doesn't make sense. And that's a problem because it puts you off. You don't want to approach a book and be mentally beaten up every time. Because what's that going to do? It's going to push you away. It's going to make you potentially dislike the hobby that you once found fulfilling. And no one wants that. However, that expectation you have for yourself might be the problem that is crushing your motivation. It's okay to struggle with a book. In fact, I'd even say it's a good thing. It's the best evidence that the book is challenging your mind and pushing you to new levels. This is only true, however, if you approach it with the right mindset. Because you can set yourself these really high expectations to understand everything, but that's going to leave you feeling inadequate. Or you can manage them a little bit so that you give yourself the room to grow slowly, yes, but surely and sustainably. Justin Sung here on YouTube mentioned somewhere that reading a hard book is not 0 to 100, it's n+1. This means that you will almost never understand the whole book in the first read through. And that's okay. The point is you can return to it with a more mature mind and understand a little bit more than last time. Maybe it's still not a lot. Maybe even after 10 attempts, you still understand only half of it. But that's okay. It's your journey, it's your wisdom, it's your thinking. And the point is you are doing the best that you can. If I constantly compared myself to these 60-year-old professors and these, really intelligent speakers, I would feel miserable because of course they're ahead of me. But, at least I can be satisfied with my own progress and my own journey in learning. Out there will always be better readers than you. But if you want a realistic path ahead, then you have to be fair with yourself and patient because this is not easy. It's damn difficult. And those are 8 of my worst mistakes in reading. I think it was 8, 7, 8, I'm not sure. If you have any of your own mistakes that I missed, I'd love to hear them in the comments. And of course, it would help other people too. And my email is also open, so feel free to message me there. I read and respond to everything. It might take some time, but it does happen. So if you have any questions or problems, just know it's there. And of course, thank you for watching.